Experts at the Massachusetts International Institute of Technology warned of the negative effects of the Ethiopian Al-Nada Dam, and confirmed in a report that the dam, which is one of the 12 largest in the world, will have repercussions on the downstream countries that depend heavily on the Nile water in agriculture and industry, and before all, drinking. Otherwise Ethiopia would have major problems managing it. In a workshop held by Abdul Latif Jamil, a global expert in water and food security at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the attendees agreed that the dam will have dire implications for the downstream countries, as John Lienhard, a water expert during that workshop, said, "Our aim is to advise and do it in a neutral manner. We did our best to find people who knew about big dams and big rivers, who didn't belong to any of the three governments, including people who had practical experience with dams of this size." The discussion during that workshop touched on 5 technical problems about the dam, the first of which is the need for comprehensive coordination for the management and operation of dams on the course of the river, as the attendees confirmed that the Renaissance Dam will join the Aswan High Dam as a second large reservoir on the Nile River, which requires Egypt and Ethiopia to formulate a plan to coordinate the operation of these 2 dams, to share the Nile water equitably during periods of reservoir filling and drought, and there are no 2 places in the world that operate 2 large dams on the same river without close coordination. The researchers continued, in order to achieve Ethiopia's strategy of not causing harm to the downstream countries, it is important that the Renaissance Dam, the High Dam and Sudan's water reserve be managed in coordination between the 3 countries, so that there is no case of excessive storage facilities in which the volume of stored water is more than it is actually needed to prevent dehydration. The attendees said, when the Renaissance Dam is completed, the Nile Basin will have a surplus of water, which requires the dam managers to be able to coordinate to choose a place to store the excess water for use during periods of long drought, and although the Nile is unique in some respects, in all the existing similar cases that we have known, there are agreements between the upstream and downstream countries on how to operate the multiple water storage facilities, and certainly if 2 large reservoirs are built on a river in one country, such as Colorado, Mississippi and Murray-Darling, their operation will need to be carefully coordinated to ensure from achieving economic and financial benefits and from the fair and equitable sharing of water among all users. This type of coordination is also beneficial to all parties on any international river. And they continued, to our knowledge, there is currently no agreement to coordinate the operation of the High Dam and the Renaissance Dam, as well as the infrastructure facilities in the Nile Basin, and there is an urgent need for this agreement to ensure that Ethiopia adheres to its obligations, that the Renaissance Dam will be established and operated so that the downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, are not affected. During the tank filling period, during long droughts. Among the technical problems that the discussion dealt with was the file of risk assessments, where the attendees agreed that the risks of building the dam in its current form include high risks, as the design of the Renaissance Dam requires the construction of a very large saddle dam to prevent leakage of water stored behind the Renaissance from the side northwest of the reservoir. The risks associated with the possible failure of this dam may not have been assessed, and must be carefully managed. In this regard, they indicated that the design requires the construction of the saddle dam to retain 89% of the direct storage of the Renaissance Dam, and the construction of electricity transmission lines to Egypt and Sudan takes at least 5 years. As for weak areas in the foundations, they are likely to exist and may lead to increased water leakage from during the saddle dam, its surface cracks and then collapses. Regarding the third technical crises of the dam, the attendees mentioned that the file of equitable water provision remains absent, as the construction of the Renaissance Dam overlooked the lack of guarantees and the ability to provide water to the Egyptians during the filling of the reservoir or during periods of drought, explaining that there is concern about the location and capacity of the low-level launch ports the Renaissance Dam to provide water to Egypt and Sudan during reservoir filling or dry periods. Among the technical problems also, according to experts, is the presence of an unreasonable surplus of electricity, as they said that there is an urgent need in the future to manage the hydropower generated from the dam, stressing that it exceeds the energy generated from Ethiopia's current domestic energy market, and thus it will need to be sold outside Ethiopia. A plan is needed for such sales, to establish transmission lines to regional markets. The energy trade agreement will ensure that the Ethiopian people get a good financial return on their investment. Fifthly, the continuous accumulation of salts in agricultural lands could accelerate rapidly, threatening agriculture in general along the Nile River. Other than that, the attendees drew scenarios for how Ethiopia would manage the Renaissance Dam, especially in the process of filling the reservoirs, stressing that in practice it carries high risks, as its storage capacity exceeds the flow of the Blue Nile for a year. Egypt has expressed concerns that if the reservoir is filled too quickly, it could severely reduce the flow on which Egypt depends, and 60% of the Nile's water comes from the Blue Nile. There is concern about reduced water flow and how Ethiopia will manage the filling of its mega-reservoir, said Kenneth Strzeibek, a research scientist with the Joint Program on Global Change Science and Policy at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and co-chair of a workshop. Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan are currently hoping that a team of international consultants can quickly find technical solutions to these difficult problems. From our perspective, this is likely wishful thinking, said Dolly Whittington, a professor at the University of North Carolina and a co-editor of the MIT report. The difficult negotiations ahead will require that foreign policy and water experts from each of the three countries have a common understanding of the technical issues and a willingness to compromise while drafting detailed agreements on reservoir operating policy, energy trade agreements, dam safety, and monitoring. Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia will try to work with their advisors to solve these 5 problems, with the need for the international community to step in, said Don Blackmore, former executive director of the Murray-Darling River Basin Authority in Australia and current president of the International Institute of Water Management.